Chalo.
Bismillah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for coming here, Hanan Sobhi Sahib. Okay. For anyone watching who doesn't recognize Sobhi Sahib, he is an Imam missionary for the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat. We'll just start off light. Do you have a favorite historical figure in Islam?
Like, of course, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
But that's low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
Everyone's gonna say that.
So just
Is there
else who I admire from the history.
Yeah. Is there someone who kind of stands out to you that has stories that you've read and learned that were very fascinating, that really appealed to you?
His name was Hazrat Abdur Rahman bin Auf, raziyallahu ta'ala anhu.
Okay.
He was a very famous companion. He's amongst the Ashara Mubashara, the 10 companions who were given glad tidings of their entrance into the paradise even while in this life.
Okay, so he was the one of the 10 that
amongst so his life was very interesting. He came to Medina, and he was the one who became the brother, because Hazur sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made everybody gave everybody an ansar with the muhajir brother to take care of them. So that one companion who, it's a famous hadith, he said that I'll divorce one of my wives so you can marry her, and I will give you one of my homes because I have two, and I have a marketplace, I have a shop, you can have one.
So the gentleman you're referring to is the one who said that he would do this?
No. He was the one who was made companion of that person. So he was the Ansar. Okay. So Hazrat Abdur Rahman bin Auf is a muhajir. He did hijrat and came from Mecca to Medina. Okay. So Hazrat Abdur Rahman bin Auf raziyallahu ta'ala anhu's answer, it sparked this interest in me. He said, God bless you with your home and your wife and everything that you just offered me. Just tell me the direction to the marketplace. That's all he asked for. Okay, he didn't want anything. He said, just tell me the direction to it was the Banu Kanika market. So Banu Kanika was the one of the tribes. That's the first Jewish tribes. If you're listening to Hazur's sermons these days, so he's gone through the whole history. Mm-hmm. And right now he made it to the third tribe that was banished from Medina. But the very first one was Banu Kanika. Okay. Right? So that they had a marketplace. Yeah. So that was a marketplace he was referring to.
These tribes were banished in the lifetime of
Hazur sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Because of their
so then this is early
nefarious activities.
Yeah. This is early on then.
And this is early on. This is where this is right when they have migrated. Okay. Now the hijrat is done, and now they're setting up in this new place in Medina.
Okay. So this gentleman, he arrives. He says, "Take me to let me know."
He says, "Just tell me the direction of the market." Yeah. And then in another hadith, it comes that I think it was like just a few months later, and Hazur sallallahu notices a yellow mark on his clothes. It was to signify that he's just been married.
On this gentleman. Okay.
This gentleman. Yeah. And Hazur sallallahu says to him, "Did you pay the dowry?" Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And he said, "Yes." He said, "What did you pay?" He said, "I paid a thing of gold, like a nugget of gold." Okay. Right? So he was the companion who came with now nothing, because they've migrated, they've left everything in Makkah. He's given a companion in Medina who offers him everything, but he doesn't take it. Mm-hmm. And he says that he's just going to go on his own merit. Mm-hmm. And he's going to work for whatever he needs to. Mm-hmm. And months later, he's able to marry. He gives in a dowry, a nugget of gold. Okay? And this is the same companion who later on, he has caravans of camels, of trade, coming into Makkah, coming into Medina. Mm-hmm. Okay? So from a migrant that came with nothing, and then he's able to build when this is the blessings of Islam, number one, but also the character of, I believe, that Hazur sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the greatest capitalist, in my opinion. Okay? Yeah. The reason I say that is because his history, it shows us, like for example, the reason that Hazrat Khadija wanted to even marry him was of his skills amongst the people. Obviously, he was truthful and trustworthy, but it was also his skill set as a merchant. Okay, he was called. It's called a mudariba. He was a mudarib, which means that he was a capital investment manager.
Oh, so he managed other people's money.
That's exactly what he did. So Hazrat Khadija said, "Here's capital that I'm going to give to you. You manage it." He would then go on a trade journey outside of Mecca to the different. This is the routes of the different intertwining Silk Road routes. They went through Arabia. Okay, so in those routes, he would then do these trading of textiles, perhaps, or spices, whatever. And then once that management is done, the profits that are attained from that, it would be equally distributed between the one who is given the capital and the one who has done the work of managing it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
What else do you call that but a capitalist?
What would you define as a capitalist? Like, what would your definition be?
Because
people have it real twisted, right? They think these greedy, like, soulless people.
So they're looking from the perspective of a greed-powered economy.
Yeah.
Okay, from the incentives of capitalism that are tied in with the interest-based economy.
Yeah.
Then you introduce all the negative side of it. For example, that's what I'm trying to say. That in that model that I just described to you, that what the Prophet ﷺ used to do and what the Arabs used to do, in that the risk is shared. So the person who's making the investment, he is taking on that risk of he's giving you that money, right? Now the risk is shared because either you're going to take a loss, and if you take a loss, then the person managing is also taking that loss, right? His time, energy, effort. But if you take a profit, then he benefits and you benefits. The risk is shared. Versus a system where I can say, here's the capital I give to you, and I'm now guaranteed a 5% return. You can call that interest or usury, right? Where that interest is guaranteed, where that one-sided flow of money is guaranteed, that is what Islam banishes. That is what is considered haram in Islam.
Can you repeat that? Where the one-sided flow of money?
Yeah. So there's no risk. Like I'm just going to say that here's, you came to me for a loan, and I say to you, here's $1,000 I give to you, but when you're going to return this loan to me, you're going to give me $1,100. Okay. Yeah. So I'm guaranteed a return. No matter what your enterprise is, I don't care. All I'm looking at is the bottom line. Am I going to get my return or not? Does that make sense?
Yes.
This is the way to enslave. If you look at it from the perspective, you can enslave individuals. There's the original indentured slaves.
Indentured servitude.
Servitude, yeah, that's how it started. That they would borrow money and they were unable to pay it back. Well, if you have no assets to pay it back, you are now the asset. Do you understand?
It's very convenient.
Yeah. Now
is that something that commonly happened at that time? So let's say
this is the common thing throughout history.
Yeah.
This is the common thing. You look at any part of history and you'll see this.
But I will highlight that as a school teacher, we talk about slavery a lot. We never talk about indentured servitude. Like, you messed up. You did something wrong. Now you owe this person 7 years of work.
Right.
However long they negotiate. And it is like an underappreciated, under-taught aspect of history.
But because it is slavery. In sense, it is slavery. You took that debt, right? You took on that debt that you were unable to pay. So society has made it that, okay, if you're going to do something where you're unable to repay your debt, then now you work for me.
But it's not slavery in the sense that after that time you are free.
After that time you are free.
And is it a 24/7 servitude? Because like slaves, they're stuck there, right?
It's interesting because if you look at the slaves from even like recently, they were like treated just like cattle. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like they're called. So they have like they're looking at their balance sheet, right?
Yeah.
On the balance sheet, it'll be their assets, right? Amongst the assets, it'll be their unintelligible assets, right? So that's like cattle. And then it's their intelligible assets. That's their people.
Yeah.
Right? They're just looking at them as a commodity, as a thing that belongs to me. So it's forever until they work themselves off. And in many a case, if that's the case, like if you look at human being, the nature of him, he will make it so that you'll never be able to work that off. If I own you, right, you're already indebted.
Yeah, so Walter Williams, he's an economist. He writes in a book about how during this period of slavery in America, many slaves were allowed to gain their own enterprise outside of their slave duties. So some slave owners would say, like, sure, you can go be a carpenter, you can sell your services dirt cheap, but I get a cut.
Yeah.
And then potentially they could buy back their freedom. And he talks about many slaves did do that. I don't know the percentage, but that was an option, right? And so my question comes back to indentured servitude. If I take a risk and say, okay, Sobhi Sahib, I'm going to take your money, I'm going to go to like Asia, I'm going to figure something out and make money, I come back, man, the money's gone, I'm broke. Now I owe you services, right? Like I'm going to work at your farm or whatever. As far as you're aware, were they stuck there 24/7, or was it like, okay, you show up here every morning, you do a certain amount of days
in different
work?
eras it was different.
Okay.
And that's in reasonable. Different eras it was always different. For example, for the Muslim era, I can speak on that.
Amongst Arab Muslims,
for Rasul, there's in the Holy Quran you'll find a word called in the verses regarding slavery, mukatbat. It's what you just described. So if a slave is able to work off his worth, he was able to free himself, and that is something that was guaranteed by the state. That's something they have to be allowed to do. That if they choose not to be a slave, then they can choose not to by working themselves off.
And who determined the price?
That would be determined by the market rate, brother, of supply and demand.
Oh man, okay. That's capitalism then, absolutely. But I mean, you know, if we look at it objectively, like slavery existed, it happened.
But like, for example, just to say, like, what is it worth? Like what you just described, like if there's a slave who is able to read and write, or is a craftsman, or has some artisan skills, of course the value would be higher, right, amongst that people who's looking for that particular slave.
The product is different.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So amongst the history of slavery, I mean, that's pretty reasonable to be like, okay, like an artisan slave is worth, I don't know, let's say $5,000. Okay, $5,000 you can earn in, let's say, 6 months. In 6 months, reasonably, you can expect to be free. Right. That's a hell of a lot better than like you were bought.
Yeah.
You'll live here, you'll work here, you'll die here. Your children will as well. Right? Which is a lot very common in
history of slavery goes deeper than that then, right? What you just described, we live here because you're bought here, and now like the children of the slaves are also going to be slaves.
It's terrible.
Right? Yeah. That's more when there's like one nation has captured another, one tribe has captured another, has enslaved them because they went to war. So the thing about slavery is it's a human condition, and you get this allegation that Islam, because the Holy Quran has given directions about slavery, therefore, God forbid it is a proponent of slavery. That's absolutely untrue. Islam is
of course, right, because the Prophet ﷺ openly stated at the end, like, you know, free your slaves.
Exactly, and it's seen as a deed that is worthy of blessings from God.
Yeah.
Right? If you mistreat a slave, the punishment of that was to free the slave. Right?
Yeah.
So why did those teachings need to be given? That's like the angle that they come from is that is there's a religion that is barbaric and it preaches slavery, and where in fact it is the opposite. It teaches that because slavery is a human condition, here are the rules for it. Here are the ways to get out of it.
Yeah.
So that simple as what you just said, that where the Prophet said that if you whatever you eat, that's what the slave should eat. Whatever you wear, that's what the slave should wear. Right?
Which is so
down
fascinating.
to that much detail. Down to that much detail.
Which is so fascinating when you look at like the history of slaves in the Roman Empire. Right. I just read somewhere, like, you know, they found a slave woman who was buried, and she had like a pretty reasonably sized golden bracelet, and the anthropologists looked at that and learned, and what they know, you know, it spoke to the status this woman had in the household as a slave.
Oh, okay. Like if you're a slave in like a very baller place, like they would probably be.
But what can we reasonably expect of the average slave in the Roman Empire? Not necessarily this law that Islamists said that like
they're cattle.
If you're right, like if you're wearing, you know, and actually I'd want to confirm this because I talked about this, but like, you know, if you're wearing silk, your slave wears silk.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
Are Muslim men allowed to wear silk?
No.
Okay. Why
Muslim
is that?
women are allowed to wear silk.
I was teaching my students about that today.
Yeah, they ask you why.
Talking about the Silk Road and silk, and I said, oh, fun fact, like Muslim men aren't allowed to wear silk.
We're not allowed to wear gold and we're not allowed to wear silk.
Is the reason because they're used to attract men?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, then I'll have to correct that.
They have a quality, this sparkle quality to them, which is more feminine.
Okay.
It's not, and less masculine. Okay. And as a man, the Prophet ﷺ, he showed us that we have gender roles.
Yeah.
Like there's no confusion. Yeah. You know, the way we have today, some very like deep-rooted confusion, we shouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. So if you teach the kids, a boy, that he is a boy, and the girl that he is a girl, this is one of the things. And one way to do that is by the physical adornment as well. So the girls wear jewelry, that is the gold ornaments, as well as the silk. And men, we can wear silver, but we don't wear, you know, sparkly things. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So then, you know, is it kind of rare or maybe mostly found in our community that men wear rings? Like I have
No. Huzur Sallallahu wore a ring. He had a silver ring.
The Prophet
Sallallahu wore a ring. Yeah. Okay. Khilafat wore rings. There's nothing wrong with wearing a ring. Prophet Messiah wore rings. It's just the specific gold.
Okay.
Yeah.
So silver necklace is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But probably not something that was commonly done or practiced. No. The necklace.
Oh, for men?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Same thing, because it's more of an adornment for women. Anything that is like can make you resemble a female, you shouldn't. Same thing with earrings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. So we had a little discussion on, you know, capitalist Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Going back to your favorite character, favorite kind of individual from Islamic history, is it known how he gained his wealth? Like
trade.
But so what?
Okay, I'll explain like this.
Because he shows up. Let's say he shows up empty-handed and asks, like, "Can you take me to the market?"
I'm gonna explain to you.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is why the other person, the one I said earlier, was Imam Abu Hanifa.
Yeah.
Okay. The way I understand it, wherever their trust is, like if there is trust there in any situation, in that trust lies the ability for wealth to accumulate.
100%. Yeah.
That's why we put our money in the bank.
Yeah.
Because we trust that the bank is going to have our funds there. Mm-hmm. Right? Our society is made that it has ensured the banks that our funds are there, though they're not there.
Yeah. Yeah. If you draw your money out.
But we trust that it's there. Okay? So the ones who are the most trustworthy individuals of society, they end up basically becoming the bank. Okay? Mm-hmm. So people would bring Hazrat Imam Abu Hanifa their wealth because they knew that when we give it to him, number one, the trust is there. We're guaranteed we're going to get our wealth back. Mm-hmm. He's not going to squander our wealth. He can hold it for us. Okay?
Oh, so this guy was an investor as well.
So what he would do is then take that wealth and, you know, whatever, raise some sheep or cattle or because people trusted him, right? Mm-hmm. So he could make those deals by word of his mouth is enough to say that deal is made. Mm-hmm. And it is made. Yeah. And the trust was there that now when the money is returned, the people who left that money with him, when they come to get it, they're going to get their money as well as whatever he made. Or if he didn't make, then it was understood. But he always made because people trusted him.
Which is so interesting because that's a economic form that no longer exists.
We can't trust the banks, you mean?
No, just maybe I misspoke there, but the idea that you just lend money and you trust people, right? Because now we have consequences and punishments. If you don't pay the money back, you get dinged with interest, lower your credit score. So, right. So I guess we have very strange ways of assorting who can you trust with money lending.
I'm a believer that is a symptom. What you just described is a symptom of broken money. it's not hard money because it's easy to produce. If they can print it at a whim, then that thought process of, okay, when I'm going to make this investment, it's not like seen as such a, they're just looking at what is going to be my return. Is it guaranteed? Because it's a guaranteed return, right? It's interest. If it's a guaranteed return, I could care less about what your enterprise is. I could care less what you're going to go do with it. Whereas if now the Islamic based system, if I know that I'm going to give you money, and it is understood that if your enterprise fails, I'm going to lose my money, I'm going to think twice. I'm going to have a way low time preference way of thinking. I'm going to be thinking further into the future because I don't want my hard-earned money to be squandered.
Yeah.
Right? Versus if it is easy to get, if interest is all based on the flow of printing it, and you can proliferate it through the society, through the bankers, through the money makers, then the people who are closest to the printing, they're going to get the benefit first, and as the money comes to society, it's getting more and more cheaper money, and that's what happens. That's why they're in this interest-based society. There has to be a boom and there has to be a bust. If you've ever heard of a boom bust?
Yeah, boom bust is very standard to what they think is capitalism or just general economics.
A general economics.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a general economics that's not on a hard commodity base, something that's not backed by something hard. Because it used to be backed by gold,
silver, copper,
something
whatever.
hard, right. Something that was not as easy to produce. Versus now, this is money because we say it's money.
Yeah, I had that conversation with my grade 10s today.
Yeah, what do they think about it? Do they understand it?
Not quite. We simply discussed the philosophy behind money. So, a student graciously handed me $15.
Right, okay.
So I taught him a quick lesson: never hand people money unless you want to get rid of it. But I held up the $10 bill and said, what is this worth? Right, $10. How do we know this? Well, it says $10 on it. Okay, but
who determined that?
Right. Yeah. So to get them to that, because they couldn't bridge that gap, I said, okay, you're on an island, you're surviving. You don't know when help is going to show up. You have food. Someone says, hey, I have this $10 bill. Can I take food from you? Are you going to get rid of your food for the 10? They say, no. Why not? It's well, it has no value, right? And so they're starting to bridge that gap of where's the value? And the next step from there is well, it's a societally agreed upon value, which I don't even know if it's true, because some strange body that exists out there can print more, and now your $10 worth less. Its purchasing power is dropped. But yeah, for many students, they've never been introduced to this idea. And explaining to them that, economics changed after the Bretton Woods conference, where they essentially said, we're just going to artificially establish the value
is
of
that
money.
Where they got rid of the peg to the gold? Where the dollar was pegged to the gold?
Yeah, they removed the gold standard.
Right.
And now money just floats based on interest rates and how much people want it.
Yeah.
Right? So if your currency is desired, you have a strong currency. If your currency is not desired, you must have a weak currency and a weak economy, right? And that's later on in the course, right? I told them that's Unit 3, we'll discuss that there. But, for the time being, looking at...
So you're teaching the students about money?
To some extent.
Is that something that's in the curriculum, or are you just doing that because...
The lesson I did maybe kind of relates to the curriculum, but in the 3rd unit in grade 10, you do talk about, after World War II, how does economic globalization occur, right? So how do you go from these kind of segmented, broken up areas to this universal global network of trade? And part of the process was standardizing the dollar, right? That is done after the Bretton Woods conference. There's a couple other things in there. I have this in some of my slides. And at that time period in history, this is like the 1960s, 50s, right? They divorce gold and money, right? And so most of the kids don't know that our dollar used to be based on how much gold we had in our reserves, right? Or whatever else, right? And then your economy as well would help. But now it's basically just whatever they say it is, right? So right now, if you look at the exchange rate of Canada to US dollar, it's like what we get
72 cents.
Right? So our economy is really weak, and it's probably going to keep dropping, unfortunately, for us.
Against the dollar.
Against their dollar, but just in general, right? Like our purchasing power in Europe has dropped. Our purchasing power everywhere has dropped, right? So that is part of the curriculum. You teach them.
That's awesome. I wish they would have taught us about money in school. They never did that.
But most
people.
I
do remember one thing though. In junior high school, like grade 9, one year they came into our gymnasium, like the different banks, CFBC, RBC, everybody had a booth, and they were handing out credit cards like candy. And then I remember like a month later, everybody was in $1,000 debt.
No, oh my God.
So they did that, but they never taught us about money.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs to be taught.
But I just don't think they'll teach in the school system because the school system
because it would be disadvantageous to them.
Yeah, the school system is designed to create people who can work in factories, who can go to university, incur more debt, continue the cycle. It's not really designed and again, for anyone who wants to question this, it's all there, right?
Yeah.
You look at the inception of the school system. It came to be during the Industrial Revolution. People are so once Industrial Revolution hits and everyone's a worker. But at some point, human rights continue to develop, and now you have this separation of adult and child, right? Because you can see photos of like 4-year-olds who used to work, right? Yeah. There's one photo I love. It's so funny. It's really sad, but it's funny.
The chimney workers?
Yeah. The 4-year-old chimney worker, right? He's covered in soot. So, at some point, and this didn't happen universally, but, over time, it's gotten to the point now where, so let's go back 10, 15 years. An 18-year-old is now considered an adult. Nowadays, it's very questionable. People will commonly say, well, at 18, you're not really an adult. So who knows, maybe in our lifetime, you become an adult at 21, 22, right? It's unfortunate because you go back 100 years and people were very capable and responsible at like 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, right? Dependable. But the school system starts being born out of this human rights movement where you have to separate between adults and children. And once children can't work, parents are in the factories. Who takes care of them? So they develop the school system. And they essentially look just like factories, right? You have the single file desks and rows. You have bells that kind of dictate everything. You have, sections, workers,
preparing
right?
the workers.
Yeah, essentially, right? That's kind of, right? And then even the skills, it's like, okay, like a rudimentary understanding of how to read, write, do basic math. So, I have a lot of criticisms for the school system, which I'll keep to myself.
Man. Yeah, but you can't.
But, yeah, the school system, as we understand it, it's not really designed to teach people about, some of the realities of money, money lending, how sketchy some of this stuff is. It's not designed to teach you to think freely and to kind of attempt to become, a capitalist in the true sense of how do I create wealth, right? Yeah. It's more how do I consume things? How do I, just make enough money, right? JOB, just over broke, right? That's an acronym I like. But it's really focused on consumption rather than production, right? Because production is, it's uppity, right? People who are producing, people who are doing things, they're making things happen, they're taking leadership and responsibility. In my estimation, they're harder to govern. And, the last thing you really want is a population that's hard to govern and that isn't very focused on low pay work, right? Which can get into a whole list of conversations, which I don't know if we need to have.
What do you think about child labor, considering everything you just said? Is there such a thing as child labor? Because those chimney workers, they were making a living for their family, no?
So
they had
well, they were making a killing, man. They were helping put food on the table.
They got to be. Why else would they do it, right? Well, unless it was like a forced thing, which I don't think it is.
I don't know. I don't know enough, right? Like I don't think they were forced to do it, right? But the thing is that
maybe they were. I don't know.
Maybe out of necessity, right? I don't know how much the cost.
Like, is a Palestinian child forced to work? Like, he's in a need-based thing. Like, he has to go get water. Like, is that forced labor?
Well, no, I think when we apply our morals of what a child's life should look like,
but considering you have to look at the conditions that they're in, right? Their condition is not like us sitting in a room and
so that's what I'm saying, right?
Their condition is different.
But that's what I'm saying, right? So for us, we live in such luxury that you can afford to not work until you're 18, 22, some cases, right? But for the vast majority of human history, vast majority of the world, you had to be productive in some way, shape, or form, right? So even prior to industrialization, a 4-year-old on a farm, what are they doing? Whatever they can manage, right? A 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, by 10, like, you're doing legit work.
The reason I asked is because my thesis was on population.
Yeah.
So that was one of the factors.
Mm-hmm.
The higher birth rates are in those places where there is more poverty.
Yeah.
So the reason for that is because they need more people that can help with things like the farm.
Yeah.
Right? So they're literally creating children to work.
It's true.
Would you call that child labor? But that's the need, right? It's the condition that's required.
Yeah. So but then the thing is, with technological advancements, like, okay, so you're running a farm with no modern tools.
Well, no, I'm talking about here, like, in the
right.
Yeah.
But the argument against. So there is this movement like, oh, you shouldn't have children, it's bad for climate change, blah, 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 all this nonsense, right?
It's ridiculous.
But at the same time, the reverse holds true what holds true is that as countries get richer, they have less children.
Yeah.
As they get more advanced, they're going to have less children because they don't need many children, right? At that point, 1 or 2 is more than enough. But the sad part is that the modern life is so taxing, right? Like as a teacher, like, I was there yesterday watching volleyball. Okay, so I got to work at like 8 a.m. 3:05 it finishes. Some of the staff are staying there till like 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock every night.
That's crazy. They're not getting paid for that?
No, they're not getting paid after 3 p.m., right? But the human cost is that, okay, you can't pursue any relationships, friendships or romantic, right? Are you really present to raise your own children, right? I would argue you're not. What can you do to further develop yourself other than just being a cog in a system that needs to keep moving, right? Like being able to do this is me developing myself, right? I have this stack of books that I'm going through, other books that I'm reading, it's developing myself, right? Spending time with friends is rejuvenating myself so I can better give myself to my work, right? And it's really unfortunate, right? So you have this reality where people are very poor and out of necessity they're having lots of children, and there's this emphasis to keep them kind of poor, right? The last thing we want is more industrialized nations because God forbid we produce more CO2 and get further along the
what's your take on that? Is it real, bro?
You can't keep people poor, right? It's unconscionable, right? Like, why should we have such luxury and be like, well,
you guys
sorry can't. Africa, sorry Asia, sorry South America, you're gonna have to stay poor because we don't want climate change, right?
You know what I think it is? I think after we're gonna get into maybe like a tinfoil hat now. I think from whatever history I've read, which is and it's got like so many holes in it. I'm not saying I know everything, but just the feeling you get, right?
Yeah.
After their imperial colonization, couple hundred years was finished.
Yeah.
I don't think they actually left. Economically, they of course kept them enslaved. They politically left, which is like just a facade, I think, in its own right. Because they pull the string from wherever they want anyways.
Yeah.
But economically, they're still indentured. They're still enslaved. Like, these countries are still economically enslaved.
This is also something that we kind of briefly touch on in the school system.
And I think this thing, like, CO2 emissions and carbon taxes, is another form of that. Okay, how do we continue to suppress them?
Yeah, I don't know if other teachers teach this, but I do touch on this.
Really? You say this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It is without a question. It is a modern form of imperialism.
Yes.
Right, and colonialism. Right, and all those words that have to do with we're going to tell you what to do, peasant.
Yes.
We're going to tell you what to do, minority.
This should be your foreign policy.
But many people, and this isn't just my own opinions. I've learned this from other people, that this is Europe's way of maintaining its power, where Europe and North America, where it's quickly starting to see Asia rise up, Africa rise up. And these countries are still so mineral rich that if they were to get their act together, right, because it's one thing to have minerals in the ground, it's another to properly get them out and sell them, and to then distribute that wealth through your country. So a lot of people say that this is just a new way for Europe to exert its influence over those same groups of people that it used to have literal physical domination over.
Exactly. But they still have the economic domination.
Yeah, so that never left. The point I'll make to that is that as colonization started ending, and they had to fairly deal with the indigenous peoples, the locals, what they did in some areas was they had 200-year contracts for certain mines. It's like, we own this for 200 years. Can you sign the deal, right? Before we leave, we're like, the plane's about to leave. Can you sign this, right? Be a real nice favor to me. So it's like, okay, you have kind of the obvious, the explicit colonialism leaves, right? At the end of World War I, World War II, these countries gain independence. But corporations exist on their own, right?
Yeah.
A corporation doesn't have to leave,
entities.
but the British rule over a colony will leave, right? But a British-owned company, they don't care, right?
Yeah.
There's no, and even better, right? Because there's no watchdog now,
overhead.
right? There's no overhead, right? Now they're in charge, right? So a lot of those companies then started abusing and taking advantage of those same resources of those same people, and it's really tragic, right? I mean, there's so many places in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, in South America, in Central America, that just literally everywhere else but Europe and North America, where they could be doing much better for themselves potentially,
right? Because they have all the minerals, they have all the resources. I give the example in my thesis of Germany, like case studies to kind of like highlight this point. So Germany is one of the largest producers, exporters of coffee.
Really?
And not a single coffee bush can grow in Germany. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So they're exporting it from.
So they get the coffee beans at like the prices, like rock bottom prices from their colonies.
Yeah.
So previous colonies.
Yeah.
And because they have the deals to them, and then when coffee comes to it processed in Germany, therefore they become the exporter.
Interesting.
But the money, like that profit, never flow to those African countries or South American countries that produce it.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's why fair trade is becoming bigger and bigger. It's like, okay, the people who actually make the bean should receive more.
Should receive something.
Right?
I was in Ghana.
Yeah.
And
is that where you went for your Africa tour?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure my brother went there as well.
Really?
Ghana.
It's an amazing place.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I lived on like this farm with this one family, and it was this cocoa season, so they were harvesting it. Cocoa, like cacao, like the actual
to make chocolate.
To make chocolate, yeah. And like the amount of work these people were doing was amazing, right? The whole family is working on this. They have like this thing, like this stand, like long throughout the whole courtyard of the house, and then they bring the beans and they dry it, and then every so often, like under the sun, the guy comes in, he'll flip it, and it's like a few days process, and it's like a continuous work, and then they get like these big 40-pound bags of cacao, and he told me the price, and I was like, that can't be right.
How much was it?
I think it was at that time, if I remember correctly, it was like 60 or 70 Ghana cedis or something like that. Something like rock bottom like price.
So like dollar wise, like a couple dollars.
Like a Ghana cedi was like $1 was 2, I think, a little more than 2. So it was like
Oh, so
the whole bag,
half. Whatever they're selling it for,
like the
half
whole thing,
they get from that.
But when you go to the store and buy chocolate,
oh my god,
you understand?
60 pounds of chocolate? You're kidding me?
So this is what I'm saying. Like the difference was it was mind-boggling to like even understand like that none of that makes any sense. These guys did all the work.
No, but I can understand. So first of all, I'm not saying that that's right, but I can understand.
And then I asked him why you sell it so low.
Yeah.
So I asked the farmer guy. He's an MD guy. Like, why is it like who are you competing with?
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, no, the price comes from above. We don't make the price.
Oh, okay.
They're not
from the country or from the company.
Whoever has made those decisions. From the colonial days, perhaps.
Like, in Canada, we have the wheat board, we have the dairy board, and they set prices as well, right? But what I'm curious is that the government of Ghana, or is that the corporation that's buying?
I don't know.
Right. Okay.
It could be. It could even be the country that has a deal. Like, for example, Switzerland.
Yeah.
They're not growing cacao either.
Oh, hell no.
But they have the best chocolates, right? The best chocolatiers are in, at least that's how they, and the taste, you can tell the difference as well. I'm sure they have the deals, man. It's the companies that have the deals.
Yeah, so
but the country in itself, like if that corporation is so large in that country that it is like a major part of the GDP of that country, what do you say then? The government has to be involved. Not so?
No, I think
their tax money too, right? They're invested.
Sure. I think there's a possibility because obviously growing crops is different than like owning a mine, right? Owning resources in the ground, right? But it could be possible that those companies set up control so long ago that now they just set the price whatever they want, whatever's suitable for them. But I will say that I think is something to be said for upscaling value of a material, right? So you have
like inflating the price of it. You mean? Is that what you just said?
No, not inflating the price, but it's like you are. So what I'm trying to refer to is that the raw cacao. Like, what are you going to do with it?
No, of course. Like there's
right?
there's a cost. No,
so there's a process.
There should be a market rate. Because the price of chocolate keeps going up.
Yeah. But is that because our dollar keeps getting crappier?
That's true. That's true too.
And it's just other issues.
It could be because
Yeah. So
I don't think it's a matter of that there's not enough of it.
No.
It's not a matter of it's not enough of it. It's definitely because the money's broken.
Yeah.
Right?
My only concern would be like, okay, what else happens to that product that they dry out that takes it to be so expensive? Right? Why is this product so cheap? Is it because
it's cheap for that specific place?
Mm-hmm.
It's not cheap. Like the commodity market, it's cheaper. Like if you look at the market rate of it, they're not trading at the market rate of it. Mm-hmm. There's a market rate of commodity goods, right? There's like a supply and demand that determines like what the value of the thing should be, right? But when you introduce pricing when humans introduce pricing into it, this reminds me of a hadith. Actually, I'll share it with you. Huzur was asked this question. So there was like a drought, famine type thing that hits Medina and the surrounding area, and the prices of things like everyday goods becomes very expensive. People start inflating the price. So
because there's not enough.
Because there's not enough.
Okay.
Right. The supply went down.
Yeah.
The demand stayed constant.
Yeah.
The prices have to go up.
Yeah.
Right. So they need that stuff. So they come to the Prophet ﷺ and they say, because now he wasn't just the Prophet of God, he was also like the one who was politically in charge of Medina. All those tribes in the Charter of Medina, that's what they agreed to, is making him the one who's in charge. Mm-hmm. So they ask him to make this decision on price controls. They ask him, control the price of wheat or oats or whatever the food stuff is that people need to survive, right? And his answer is amazing. It kind of explains a lot of the human action that is not needed. Huzur says that I can't do that and I won't do that because the prices are in the hand of Allah. The prices of things, these kind of things, are in the hand of Allah. Okay? So he didn't do any price controls. What is interest if not a price control on money, on the most important thing? This is why it's so forbidden in Islam.
That's excellent. I was gonna shift into that. But you also brought up another interesting point that we could discuss too, of like the connection of religion and state. If Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is
sure,
state. But let's first just talk about. So I guess is the understanding and implication of that hadith that like it's not up to a person to decide the price, a ruler to decide the price.
Exactly. Like you can't set up a price of something.
Yeah.
Right? Because that wrecks everything else down the line of that chain of the thing.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like I mean, you see it.
It becomes a means of control. There's a one-sided control in that arrangement. Mm-hmm. This is why he said that you cannot. Like these specific things have to be traded on spot, which was gold, silver, dates. Yeah, because that's a foodstuff that is like it's a long store of value. It's a long, because remember you can dry it and they can use those dates for long. Because remember they're crossing deserts. This is something that would be ideal for that situation. You need it. Mm-hmm. Wheat and barley. And salt. Yeah. That doesn't mean that these are the only ones that you can't trade against, like on not on spot, but amongst the things.
On spot, you mean like right then and there? You figure out the value.
Like the trade it for the same thing. Otherwise there will be interest implication, right? If I say, yo, here's an ounce of gold, and when you give it back to me, you need to give me an ounce and a quarter or whatever. Yeah. Right? That would be interest. Yeah. So it has to be treated. If an ounce has to be given back in an ounce, so the interest isn't included in there.
That makes sense.
Same with dates. Same with barley.
But that's lending.
For lending purposes. Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So but the price of dates.
So and for prices of something, he didn't allow price fixing of anything. Mm-hmm. So it stays in what the market value should be.
So whatever people are willing to pay.
Exactly, because it's subjective. Mm-hmm. I might value milk differently than what you value milk.
Yeah. No, and that's a tremendous flaw in communism, right?
Yes, it's absolutely.
Like who gets to decide this value?
There were
right, and you know, like you said, like I really like milk, but I like grass-fed milk. I want quality milk. Right. So I'm willing to pay like I think it's like $12 for 15, 16 bucks.
Is it like a difference in taste? What do you pay so much for milk for?
I notice it. Okay. I notice it. But what I definitely notice is I don't have digestional issues.
With the grass-fed one?
Yeah, with the higher quality milk.
Okay.
Right. The sad thing is that all milk should be like that. You know, like we shouldn't, because halal isn't just about the slaughtering process. It's also about the raising of the animal.
Yes.
Right. But coming back to this, because I love tearing on communism. Yeah, like by whose right do people decide what something is worth?
Yes.
Right? And I do find that a lot of the problems in society, you know, I learned this from Jonathan Pajot. He's a Orthodox Christian. He really talks about this. It's like people have lost sight of what's either at the top of the pyramid or above the pyramid of hierarchy. Right? They've lost sight of the fact that God is there.
Yes.
Right? And you know, when you have these systems that say, well, we'll figure everything out for you, it is implying that, well, we'll do God's job and we can do it better, right?
Yes.
And through these policies, these practices just lead to catastrophe because, you know, we're not omnipotent, we're not omnipresent. You know, we don't have our God calculator that calculates everything.
The cost of it, the giving up, what you're giving up every time is for the sake of that so-called security, is your freedom. Mm-hmm. Every time you give it up, is your freedom that you give up.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's a hard thing for people to grasp because they enjoy that security so much. I think it was one of the early founders of America. He said that if a nation gives up its freedom for the sake of security, like yes, go ahead, military, you can be in charge of us because you're going to secure us. He said they deserve to be enslaved. That's the thing you can't give up is your freedom.
I've heard variations of this quote. What I have also heard is that a nation that gives up its freedom for security will lose both.
Will lose both?
Yeah. But I've definitely heard that like you deserve to be enslaved, right? Like, what are you doing? You're making a horrible mistake. And you know, this kind of relates to this transition of, we can call it human rights, but this kind of like babification of society that like, you are a human being, subhanallah. You have such capacity and power. You're made in the image of God. You have His attributes. But so many people, and even ourselves, myself, I know this at times, we shrivel.
Yes.
Right? With fear. And it's unfortunate because it's like, well, what if your relationship with God was that God would support me in the things I do, and He would make a way for me, But instead, it's like, well, what if this bad thing happens?
Yeah.
And it's like kind of forgetting that one, God exists, and two, your grave waits for you quicker than you think, man. It's right there. So
this is why you need tawakkul.
What does that translate?
Like trust in Allah. This is why it's mentioned so much to have tawakkul. A believer has to have tawakkul on Allah. He has to have trust in Allah.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to do that? Have you ever struggled with that?
With having trust in Allah?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, man. Everybody struggles with that. But then when you see signs of whatever it is that you wanted, and then you put your trust in God, and then whatever happened ended up being far better than what I could have imagined in my wildest dreams, it kind of gives it some more certainty.
You reinforce.
And you reinforce it, and you remember that. But of course, then you fall again, and you forget that, and then Allah finds a way to remind you again that you're nothing, and then you go back at it again, and then you put your trust back in God again. So it's a struggle. It is a struggle. This is, I think, kind of part of the philosophy of iqamatu salat, of like raising your salat, keeping it standing. That's what iqama means, to keep it standing.
Keep your prayer
standing, because it falls. We falter in our week or in the month, in a year, in a day. We falter. That's why we have 5 times a day, so that each time we can go and iqamatu salat, like raise our salat again, keep it standing. But even in that way, we are actually doing that to ourselves.
But even in the translation, the saying, it's like, keep your prayer standing, like the physiology of standing. Keep it upright. Keep it, like, maintain it.
Yeah.
Right? Because, sitting and laying down, you don't really have to do anything.
In a psychological level, means keep your eyes straight, keep your back straight, keep your life straight.
Yeah.
Keep reminding.
Like Jordan Peterson has his rule, like, stand up straight with your shoulders back, like face life head on. Right. Keep your prayer standing, like
keep it standing.
You're a human being. Right? So
I was gonna say, you reminded me something interesting where you said they gave themselves the power of God.
Yeah.
So I look at interest like that as well, right? Where if you're able to, the ultimate result of a society that's on interest is that now it gives itself the power to inflate money, right? If it inflates money, if an entity that has the power to inflate the money, that means the money I already have in my pocket or my account or whatever, its value became less.
Yeah.
They suck the actual value of it away from me. So I'm enslaved to them. Right? So if I use that money, I'm enslaved to them.
Yes.
If you think about it.
Not if you think about it. That's a very straightforward, accurate statement, right? If they can simply decide.
And have you seen? Sorry to cut you off. The reason I was saying they made themselves God is because only God can create out of nothing. Right? He's the Khalik. He's the. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. He's the one who can create out of nothing, and now these people gave themselves the power to create out of nothing. But it's not out of nothing, right? Thermodynamics. You can't create something out of nothing. They're sucking it away from us.
Yeah.
Or the everyday other individual person in society.
Yeah, because the important note there is that you never deflate value, so your $10 goes further, right? It's always inflated, so your $10 goes less.
It's going
right?
less.
You'll never in my 28 years have I seen like, hey, with $10 I can buy, a full bag of groceries like for a week,
Big Mac used to be like $4.
Yeah, and we're never going back to that.
Never
right?
happening again.
So not only, so would you say that that's shirk? Like setting up equals or partners with God?
They made it to them. They are themselves God. This is the ultimate shirk.
Okay. It's like shirk on steroids.
That's the ultimate. In the Quran there's a verse. It says, "Allazina yakuluna riba, la yakumuna illa إِلَّا كَمَا يَكُومُ الَّذِي يَتَخَبَّطُهُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. He said, those who devour interest, they stand on nothing, they have not gained anything, except that Satan has smitten them with insanity. Okay, Satan has touched them. So now all their decisions are insane. It makes sense why they're using $1 million bombs to bomb tents. Like it's an insane decision, right? If you think about it.
Yeah, the war on terror.
None of it makes any sense.
Right? Yeah.
So that's a byproduct of a system that is based upon interest. That like Satan is going to be in that system, causing them to do insane things.
Yeah, and not just that, but just act with such pompous nature that like, oh, we can do whatever we want with money. We can print billions, trillions. We can lock everyone up in their house. We'll print money. We'll give it all to them, and then 10 years down the road, their money is going to worth nothing.
There has to be a crash. Yeah. That's the boom and bust cycle. It's part of the. It has to happen.
Well, and the manner in which we spoke about interest, it's like we are now soon on our way to being indentured servitude.
I would argue we are already. Like, if you have a mortgage, what is that?
You're screwed. Yeah.
Right. They can take your house from you. It's not your house. Mm-hmm. If they can take your house, it's not even your house.
And our government's working very hard to rip houses out of the hands of normal people. Like even transferring the deed. So, subhanAllah, my father, he has 2 homes. He'll have fully paid off, subhanAllah, very soon. But for him to take, and literally this man has, his knees and his back into these houses, working for, 30, 40 years. If he decides to write in his will that I would like to give these 2 homes, to either daughter, one, right? And maybe so much that you can't even afford to have that house now. Mm.
So
which is like such a crime.
Have you told them about estate planning? There's ways to
I'm
gift
looking,
it, for example.
Yeah, I'm looking into that. So the way gifting works is you and that person have to have been living there.
Okay.
Right? So it's complicated. Right? I've also thought about incorporating the 2 houses. Yeah. And then treating them as rent. Right?
Yes.
And that way it stays in the company, and the company can be owned by different people, and the value can be taken, right?
And you can expense against it too.
Potentially, right?
That's perfect. That makes sense.
Right. So
because it's your asset, you should have the ability to control it. That's my point.
Well, that's if the system is designed to help you, right? But our systems, I firmly believe, are not designed to help the vast majority of us. I wouldn't even argue any Canadians really. Right, because even the wealthiest suffer quite a bit through taxes and through all of these things. It's just they have enough wealth to buffer them from the headache.
They don't feel it. Yeah.
Right. And then, So coming back to that point of insanity, absolutely, right? You see these people just do things so callously.
Yeah.
We can do whatever we want. They've forgotten that God exists, that their grave awaits them very quickly. It's really sad to see because. So the ultimate shirk of not just will create wealth and whatnot, but the sin of then let me enslave all these people, the hubris to say that I'll do it without them knowing that they're slaves.
That's the part we haven't touched on is the not knowing, the deception aspect. This is the Dajjal then, right?
Yeah.
If it's designed to deceive in this way. Mm-hmm. This is the deception that the Prophet, peace be upon him, he warned us about, and the fact that they have the ability to move provisions so much so that one nation can be completely destroyed, famine, no food whatsoever, and another one can be so overweight that that's their disease.
Yeah. Is there any form of interest that is halal?
No.
So for example, Wealth Simple offers, hey, you store our money with us, we'll give you 4% cash back, 4% interest on the money you save.
Yeah.
Is that also haram?
It's haram.
Okay. So anything that deals with interest.
Yeah.
So then what does a Muslim do in this world? Right? So I have money that I don't know what to do with, and it's rapidly losing its value because it's just sitting around. What should I do in order to keep it?
You have to invest it. So the way I understand it, man, as a Muslim, you have no choice but to become an investor. Because, for example, let's say you hold money. If you're holding the cash or cash equivalents like gold, silver, anything, like if you're saving it, there's something in Islam, because that's also not allowed. You're not allowed to hoard money.
Yeah.
That's a completely un-Islamic practice. It is very important. Like, a Muslim is allowed to get rich. A Muslim is allowed to do business. He's allowed to make a profit. He's allowed to be wealthy, but he has to distribute the wealth. That's the equitable part about it. For example, Zakat is a pillar of Islam. It's a requirement. So any wealth that you have that is more than, I think it was like 88 grams of gold.
I believe it's 85.
85?
Yeah.
So if you have wealth more than that, then Zakat has to be laghu on that. You have to pay Zakat on that. So that means, what do you do with your wealth that's more than that?
And my question is, between 0 and 85 grams, are you off the hook?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you do have
that much or more...
So is it that first chunk? You know how taxes work, right?
Included.
That would be included. So whatever your Zakat is includes
that much and more. It'll include that first part.
Okay. And only if you have more.
And then if you have more than that, which has not been used for a whole year, so it has gone unused, you hoarded it essentially for a year, you've had it, and now you have to give 2.5% of that in Zakat. 1/40th of that.
I knew this a while ago, and I just didn't know where to give the money.
No, you could give it in through the Jamaat channel. There's a thing there for the Zakat, and it's used for the right purposes of Zakat, which is for the miskeen, which is for the weak, the needy.
So in my scenario, because I have over 85 grams worth, I give 2.5% on the entirety of it.
Yes.
Not everything above the 85 grams.
No, if you have above that, it will be that plus whatever above added together, 2.5 of it. So let's say you have 60 grams, you have 100 grams.
Yeah.
Then you will pay on all of it. So you pay 2.5.
Okay.
So whatever the value is of 100 grams of gold,
yeah,
get 2.5% of that and pay in Zakat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, that clears that up for me. And what does Zakat pay? Like, what does it do in a traditional, functional Islamic society, right?
Great question, man. So Zakat has multiple purposes. Okay, it is for the poor, it is for the needy, it is for the wayfarer, the travelers. It is for all those things which are, you can consider as welfare need things for the society. So for example, in a society there are able-bodied people, but you're also going to have laymen, you're going to have those who are unable to work, those who are injured, so many things, but that doesn't mean that the state has to reject them or they become a burden upon the state. No. They have to be looked after, taken care of, right? So this is what the Zakat is for. If it's a Zakat is a tax on wealth, it's a wealth tax, okay? So that means the more a nation becomes wealthy, and the righteous individuals, of course, that is needed, because otherwise they wouldn't pay Zakat. So but
you can't pay Zakat on money you won gambling.
Exactly, you don't.
Yeah.
No.
It has to be earned in a halal manner.
So I'm saying that the more wealth a nation gains, the more, because it's not a progressive task. It's just exactly on 2.5 of that wealth that is above that.
Yeah.
So not on investments, not on money that is working. Though that money, you would not pay Zakat on that.
That's very interesting. It's so different to our modern understanding of the financial system, because we're so unaccustomed to the idea that everyone should be looking to be smart with their money. Because what are we really doing here, right? Let's be honest. This push for people to not have children, too many people on the planet, climate change, is essentially another push for consumerism. Don't have kids, focus on your cat. Focus on your drinking. Focus on yourself is two ways to look at that. There's kind of like all these books cost money, and I've touched and looked through many of them, right? But many of them are unread. I bought courses, I spent money, setting up this podcast studio. Sure, there were some things in here that maybe didn't need to get bought, but if it develops you and makes you into a better person, I look at that differently. But regardless, the thing is, and I've had this discussion, I'd like to hear kind of your thoughts on it in the Islamic perspective. When I don't have a family, I don't have a wife or kids, but from what I've heard, it's like when you get married and you do it truthfully and honestly, it's like you're one unit, right? Till death do us part. None of this like, I'll try you out for 5-6 years and I'll divorce you, I'll go do something else, right? You become one unit, and then let's say you advance that unit, you have a child, right? The thing that I have observed is that it focuses you. Like I know so many people who they become parents, dads, and they're like, okay, I gotta start like learning how to make my own food. I gotta start being smart with my money. Like all this bakwas, all this nonsense, like we can't engage in that, right? Yeah. We gotta spend money, get the kids in programs, right? Or spend money, develop our family, develop a business. You become very focused. And you stop caring about the noise, right? Who gives a damn if the new car came out, new phone, new this, new that? Like, I don't care about the new rendition. Your priorities completely change. Assuming you're, healthy, right? Let's say, just use that as a overall term. You're healthy, right? Because some people, certainly they have kids and nothing changes, right? They're presented with the opportunity to change, but they stay the same. Mm-hmm. But let's say, generally speaking, people who get married and have children go on, the greatest adventure of their life, right? You could look at it. It takes away from this push from corporations to keep you as a consumer and keep you spending and keep you in that cycle of you have to work, you have to spend, you have to work, you have to spend. So, what does Islam have to say about the responsibilities of individuals, and what is Islam's kind of marketing point outside of just you'll incur God's blessings?
From a whole family social fabric kind of perspective, here's what I would say.
Okay.
Islam would offer you, for example, let's look at the rights that why would anybody come into this marriage? Why would anybody come into this agreement, right? What do you get out of it?
Yeah, why give up your freedom and autonomy
what do you get
to
out
be
of it, right?
married?
So Allah tells us is that you're supposed to find the comfort and peace in each other. They're our comfort. Like you're always gonna have a void. I
learned that recently.
Yeah.
In Islam, your spouse is there as a peace.
As peace for you. Yeah. The peace has to emanate from them, right? Mm-hmm. This is so a lot of things are there. Peace that you didn't even know existed yet. Because as an individual, how can you feel that peace unless you have that companion first, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that, and the comfort. So that's what you get from a man, perhaps, as a perspective, as well as for the woman. But for the woman, you also get the man in Islam. They are the providers. Okay, whatever a man earns is his and his family's, his wife and his kids. But whatever a woman earns is solely her property, her assets. Mm-hmm. Right? And a man in Islam is not supposed to eye the wealth of his wife for the expenses of the household. That is, then he is practicing against Islam if he does such a thing.
Which is fascinating considering like our economic.
Now it's hard to have a one income household.
Yeah,
that's the way the trend is going.
Yeah.
So like you said,
and I would say that that's a planned effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's not as if they don't see that. How can they not see that? Mm-hmm. Of course they see that, and yet it still continues in the same direction. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So in Islam, generally speaking, the marketing is that you should do this thing because it incurs God's favor, blessing. But is there?
One thing I forgot to add. And then the production from that enterprise of marriage.
Yeah, children.
The children.
Yeah.
Right? When you get children, it also fulfills this longing. You have this it is a natural human longing, and I think the older I get, it becomes more apparent to me of having something left behind after you. Right? Someone said that the best thing that a person can leave for his ongoing blessings, everything, he said, all your deeds are in this world except the deeds that the blessings that you get from a righteous child, righteous son who prays for you, any sadaqah jariyah that you may have done, maybe planted a tree, a charity that you may have done, right? A continuous charity, right? And I forgot what the first one was. Seems very important. Escaped me. But these were the things.
I've heard of those too. Any sort of charity that exists beyond
and knowledge. The useful knowledge that you have gained and left behind. So all like everything that we know about like the technology, it's something that's added on to the previous person who was able to gain that much more of that knowledge.
Sure. So my YouTube channel is giving me blessings?
Well, exactly. If somebody were to benefit from this knowledge, if they assume it to be any good knowledge for them and they take it and that changes their life, then why would you not get the blessing?
Sure. Alhamdulillah. Good. Okay. So,
but the opposite is probably true too, though.
The opposite is more likely. Any evil that So I've taught this to people, right? Because I know I partook in this. Any evil that exists due to your influence, right? So if you normalize a behavior, and other people around you, other Muslims as well, God forbid, around you start getting comfortable acting and portraying themselves in a particular manner, you gain their sin, right? Which is interesting because Islam is very adamant that a soul is a soul, but except for this one case where if I normalize and regularize evil, wrongdoing, then it's my wrongdoing as well. Not that their soul isn't free of sin. I'm sure they get.
What you just described. This is, in my opinion, one of the reasons why the punishment for a false prophet is so severe.
What is the punishment for a false prophet?
It's death in an unnatural means. A death by unnatural means, but you'll be murdered, right? Or some like earthquake, poison, something crazy like that. Not something like old age and death.
Yeah.
How do we? Because Allah, because He says that because a person can lead somebody astray when it comes to the matter of God, like how do you know whether he's saying that what he's saying is actually from God or not, right? People can confuse, people can they can convolute people's minds very easily. Some people are very good and talented at that, in fact, right? So if they're able to do that and take people away and start to have them believe that they are the prophets, the fake prophets, false prophets, Allah says that is a punishment that requires something out of the ordinary. Allah says, I will take them by my right hand and I will cut their jugular vein.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very severe.
Okay. I'm curious then, maybe a more critical question. So we're well aware that many of the leaders after Prophet Muhammad ﷺ died due to murder. Like, how do we reconcile these two things?
They weren't making claims of prophethood, Brad.
Okay.
That was just the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But the example of the ones who did make the false claims, because right after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and even actually during his life, some of them started to make this false claim because when they see, he became the ruler of Arabia in a very short time. So they saw that as, and they accepted him. They accepted him as their leader. But as soon as he passed away, they saw that as a means of consolidating power. That, hey, we can claim to be prophets. And then we will also have this kind of following, and we will also have this, and try to take over Arabia. This is what the Rida Wars were all about. This is what Hazrat Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu had to fight against right after the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Okay. This is a good segue into our, I wanted to ask about the warfare. And we all already discussed a lot, so some of this is probably going to be repeat, but I don't know if other Muslims say this, but Ahmadis are very adamant that the wars fought in Islam, and maybe to clarify, I suppose, the wars fought while Muhammad ﷺ was alive were all defensive wars.
Right.
So we have the period where he's alive and the period after him. The particularly you have the four leaders that come after him, and then after that, I don't know. After that, it's kind of whatever in my mind.
Okay, but it's not whatever. We can go there too if you want.
Sure,
it's a very interesting history.
Sure, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying after that, it's you're so far removed from
from the actual source.
not just the source, but the claim, right? Because obviously there's a point in Islamic history where, like, you know, you look at the Ottomans, right? You look at these various empires. They're for sure like, let's go get land, right? Let's go over there. Like, you know, eventually they conquer Spain and a bit of Portugal, I think. I don't know if that was defensive, right? But
if it was needed.
Just like the 12 kids on the farm, right? We need that land.
But you need it. Conditions.
Yeah. So during the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all wars are defensive.
Right.
How so? Like what?
Okay. Well, let's look at the scenario to see what we mean by defensive. Okay. So Hazur sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes his claim. He gets persecuted for 13 years. Doesn't say anything. Doesn't do anything. Doesn't fight them. If Islam was... This question you asked is basically, was Islam spread oppressively through a jihad of trying to force conversion, and that's how they amassed all this land and empire?
Yeah.
That's the basic question which you're asking, right? Versus, okay, was it acquired only through defensive means?
Well,
at a certain point you're thinking, okay, where does the defense end and the offense start?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So it's a very hard place to say, okay, here's the line kind of thing, but let's kind of look at the scenario, right? So then we get an idea of it. So Hazur Sallallahu persecuted for 13 years, and then he leaves. So the people who are bothered by him...
Goes to Medina.
He goes to Medina. So he leaves the people who are bothered by him. All right? So he migrates away. He goes to Medina, but the people who are bothered by him are so bothered that now they form an army and come to Medina.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, it has to be like, we're on a defensive territory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's just hilarious. Like, we're so bothered. We don't care that you're... Because Medina is, what, 100 miles away?
I think like 200.
200. That's a long distance back then.
Still it's like a 6-day, 7-day, I think, journey by camel.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And 200 miles is no joke even now.
No doubt.
Right? Okay.
Right.
And they're like,
not
far enough.
And remember, this is a state of time where, like, going for war is not easy.
Yeah.
Going for war is like, you have to invest into it, you have to prepare for it.
Yeah, despite it being a Middle Eastern war, there's no drone strikes back then.
No, and you're going to take everything, your cavalry, your instruments, everything, you're going to go, and it's a big ordeal. So, like, from an economic perspective even, it's not like just a drone strike.
Yeah.
Right? This is like the full commitment to go and for the sake of killing this person and his community. Okay?
Yeah. So
now Allah gives them that right that you have to defend yourself. Right? Allah says in the Quran, "Ozina lillazina yuqataluna bi annahum zulimu." Permission is granted to you for fighting because you were wronged. So it starts off from that point. It's because you have been wronged, because you were driven out of your homes. Now you have the right to defend yourselves against these people. And then when we look at just the sheer numbers, right? The first battle of Badr, it is over 1,000 of the disbelievers versus 313 believers, right? Then battle of Uhud, same thing. Like the Prophet ﷺ never went to Makkah to attack them.
Yeah.
Now that they win the battle of Badr, the Muslims win. Again, they come, and now is the battle of Uhud, where the Muslims, they suffer a defeat by all, like, you know, objective metric. It was like a defeat, but they weren't able to destroy Islam or kill the Prophet ﷺ, so they failed in their mission.
Yeah.
Right. Then they come again. This time, not just them, but all of them. This is what Hazur was talking about recently in the sermons, was the battle of the ditch, the Jang-e Khandak, right? This is now a consolidation of all of the other tribes as well, not just the Quraysh.
All of Arabia.
Is it like, some reports say 10,000 soldiers, some narrations say up to 20 to 24,000 soldiers, right? So it's a huge, like the large army to come and to kill off these people. They were seen as this perceived threat to their status quo. Okay? So they're defensive because they're literally digging a ditch to defend themselves.
Yeah.
So in his life, these are the major battles. And after the battle of the ditch, Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said that now the Quraysh of Makkah, the disbelievers, will never attack us again. Okay? So after that, Hudaybiyah happens, the treaty. So now they've lost and they've won some battles, but the enmity hasn't finished. Now they created the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. They're connected, and now when the disbelievers break that treaty, right? It's like yo, we agreed to a governance, and now you were treacherous to that governance.
Yeah.
What is the punishment for treachery?
Well, you should be able to go to war with them.
Not just you should be able; they should be killed.
Yeah.
Against you, they're your direct enemy now, right? Yeah. They're treacherous to your government and to your
they're
to your society.
They're treasonous, right? They're committing treason to their government.
So that's what they've done, right? And this is what the Prophet ﷺ then. This is where the Fatah Makkah happens, the victory of Makkah happens. Okay. Now everything up till this point, there's other skirmishes that have happened as well. For example, we talk about after that. Well, then they started attacking the Byzantine Empire, the Byzantines,
the Muslims,
right? Okay. The Romans. But that's not true either, because in Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life, the war against the Romans had already started. They had already. This is the Jang-e Mota.
Okay, the Arabs were already fighting.
They had Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sent a dispatch of his army towards the north, towards where the Byzantine Empire touches the Arabia. Yeah. That's where the what do you call that area? Like the threshold, the front lines, right?
The front line. Yeah.
So there was always this threat that they're gonna come and they're gonna attack, because now something like this doesn't just happen. To them, the Arabs were like these group of Bedouins, and it's not worth their time.
Right? They're nomadic. They're
not worth their.
They're
but now they've governed themselves, and they've connected themselves and communicated in such a way, and formed a threat to them, or a perceived threat, because nothing has happened yet. The Rasul hasn't attacked anyone. The Muslims haven't done anything, but they perceived a threat. They're the bigger power. They said, let's go squash this before it becomes a huge problem for us.
Yeah,
that's what Jang-e Mota was.
It's pretty smart on their behalf, right? Like you all of a sudden see a very
Game of Thrones, right?
Right, you see a very adept group of people all of a sudden start organizing themselves. They're like, wow, we better
watch out.
We better step on that bug before it grows.
Exactly. Right? So that's what they decide to do. So when they become unified, and now still, if you look at the scale of the armies, it's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like this particular battle of Mota, Hazur Sallallahu knew that the commander that he is sending, I think it was Hazrat Zad Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, he's going to die. And then he said, after you die, then the flag should go to, I think it was Hazrat Jabir Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. And if he should also die, then it should go to whoever you pick from amongst yourselves. Okay, which ends up being Khalid bin Walid, Hazrat Khalid bin Walid Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. And
famous Muslim.
Very famous, because then he was very strategic. So he switches the armies, right? The same, like the divisions. He just switches them so that they think that reinforcements have just arrived. It's the same people. and they retreated. They left, right? So it was a victory in that sense. But the first two commanders were killed, right?
Yeah. Also,
they were very famous.
Zed, I don't know the second person you mentioned.
Hazrat Jabir Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, I think it was the cousin, if I remembering correctly.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that.
And I think that it's very reasonable what the Muslims did in that sense to there's an empire to the north of us. We have our own borders. We need to send some people to ensure that they know we're here.
Not just they know we're here, the threats had already started coming.
Okay, so there's
a very famous hadith. It's used to kind of showcase the bravery of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where there was loud noise in the surroundings of Medina at night, and the people get up to go see what's going on, and they see Hazur sallallahu alaihi wasallam riding his horse bareback with his sword around his neck, and comes and tells everybody everything's fine, go back to sleep, everything's good. Right, his to sense it because of the sheer threat of the Romans that they had. Do you understand? So these threats were always there, that they're going to attack at any time, and then they did. So it was always a defensive war in the life of Hazur sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
Now let's get to after him to a certain extent, because what we can say is we are going to talk about only the Khulafai Rashidin.
Yeah. These are the four leaders.
The four Khulafa, the four successors that came after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, namely Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Usman, and Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu ta'ala anhum. Right? So, in their times, regarding them, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that the Khilafat in Nabuwat, the Khilafat of this prophethood, will last 30 years. So he's already kind of he predicted prophecy. He prophesied this. He said this. This is in authentic books of hadith, right? So he's already declared what the Khulafa Rashidin are. Now, he didn't say per se these names. He said it's going to be this many years. Okay? So in that way, we know what the Khulafa Rashidin. And then what happens is that the actual events of history also portray that there is no ambiguity regarding these four and their righteousness and what they did for Islam and what the decisions that they made, why they made those decisions. And then the ambiguity does start right after that, because right after that came Mir Mawiyah. He is the you can say the head of the Umayyad dynasty. The Umayyad dynasty starts right after the Rashidin Khilafat, and the Umayyads are the ones that come from Mir Mawiyah. And regarding him, we say that he is a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We say Hazrat Mir Mawiyah radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu. We give him the full due respect. Many Muslims don't. The reason being is they say that his decisions and the infighting that resulted because of them showed that he was not, truly rightly guided in that way.
But did he have to be?
Did he have to be?
Yeah,
he didn't have to, but that shows that the Rashidin Khilafat has ended exactly in those 30 years that Hazur predicted.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm just saying, I guess, to the criticism that other Muslims hold, like, oh, well, he wasn't righteously guided because, he had all these challenges. Like, well, did he have to be? Right? Like, he was just the leader picked. Or a leader picked.
Well, he was picked by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was picked. So, okay. So when Islam is now, after Fatah Makkah, it is dominant, right? And during... Sorry, my mistake. He wasn't picked by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was picked by Hazrat Umar.
Okay.
By Hazrat Umar, the second Khalifa. Okay? Obviously, he was picked for some merit, because Hazrat Umar is an amazing administrator and is even known, even amongst the non-Muslim world, as a great leader of his time. Right? Now, he picks Mir Mawiyah as the governor of the Levant. Okay, Islam is now...
It's like Lebanon.
No. Lebanon, Palestine, present day, all of that area around. Syria. Damascus was his home base. Okay? So, he chooses governors and sends them all over. Okay? This is already started during Hazur Sallallahu time. As soon as after Fatah Makkah, the various tribes, they dispatched their ambassadors, and they accepted Islam and they became part of the Muslim empire, let's call it, right? In Hazrat Umar's time, that expansion continued against the Byzantines, right? And those, like I said, they had already started the war. They had already begun, the Sassanids as well as...
And you were saying that those conflicts had begun even before the claimed prophethood.
Hazur Sallallahu.
Yeah. Like, were the Romans already...
During his life. During his prophethood. Remember, I gave the example of writing back? Yeah. This is already happening. Okay. Like, they've already started to worry about these guys. There was an arrest warrant against Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The governor for Byzantium that was in Yemen, he was ordered to go and arrest Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And when those men arrived to arrest him, he told one of them, Hazur Sallallahu tells him, come back tonight. And then he comes back and he tells him that my God has killed your God. And then the letter comes from Yemen that the previous orders are no more. They have been seized because the son of the ruler, he killed his father to become the ruler. And he discarded all his orders. Just like that overnight. And So they were already in fear of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and had already, made these plans against this small group of Muslims.
Yeah, and that continues.
And Rasul never hid from this either. Like he had sent letters to these people, telling them accept Islam. I am the Prophet of God. I was sent from God. Like he is making it very clear and known to them what he is and what his intentions are.
And then during the time of Umar, these battles continued.
These battles continued, and they continued to lose under the leadership of Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiyallahu ta'ala anhu,
the Romans lose, the Byzantium Empire.
Not just them, and the Persians.
Okay.
The Sassanids. Right? So they're fighting these two fronts during Hazrat Abu Bakr, in the time of his life, and then in Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu's life. They are fighting these battles and winning these territories, and now these governors are being set up, okay? And the governor of the Levant, of Syria, of Damascus, is Muawiyah, Hazrat Muawiyah, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And he's a great administrator as well. He comes from a great line of people who were in charge, the Umayyads, okay? These are two cousins, okay? By the way, the Quraysh and the Umayyads are cousins, right? Muawiyah, he has a falling out with Hazrat Ali because Muawiyah and Usman are cousins. Muawiyah and Usman are cousins. Hazrat Usman, the then Khalifa, is killed, and Hazrat Ali becomes the Khalifa, and Hazrat Ali does not get the revenge for Usman.
Does he forgive them?
He doesn't forgive them. He was in a state that the Muslims, he didn't want them to fight each other. But Muawiyah says that this person hasn't even investigated. He has not started the investigation, and the killers of Usman haven't been brought forward. Hence, we break from you. So now these two people there's infighting. This is Muslims are fighting Muslims now.
Muawiyah and Ali.
Okay. Hazrat Ali is also killed. He is stabbed by a person who switches sides on him with a poisoned sword. So Hazrat Usman is killed. Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu previously was also murdered. He was killed.
Which one of them was killed just by like a random crazy guy?
That was Umar.
Okay.
Umar
And he's
killed.
the second.
He was the second.
Okay.
And then Hazrat Usman is also killed.
Yeah.
And then Hazrat Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he's also shaheed.
Yeah.
All of these are shaheed.
And now official leadership has come to an end.
And now the Rashideen Khilafat has come to an end.
Okay, I guess I should say
because remember, Muawiyah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Muawiyah has won, right? He is the now administrator and the one in charge of everything. Okay? It's an interesting point, just like a side tangent point. I read this from Hazrat Muslim radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He says that when they were attacking, like when the hypocrites and people who wanted to break the Khilafat, when they were attacking and through this various means of deception, which was I forgot the name of the guy. It was a Jew who was like kind of in charge, who had taken on this task to kind of create this discord amongst the Muslims and amongst like wherever people in charge are. Everywhere he went, they were successful, except in Damascus, because when they came to the court of Muawiyah, he saw through them, and he banished them from their land, from his land. He said, "Get out of here." So they were not able to infiltrate the way they did in these other areas of the Islamic empire of the time. And it is an actual infiltration. When you look at the history, it is very sad, like the way Hazrat Ali and Hazrat Aisha fought in the Jang-e-Jumbo, the Battle of the Camels. You can tell that there's clear and great deception that is taking place for the likes of the mother of the believers, Hazrat Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, a learned lady in her own right, and Hazrat Ali, this noble warrior and leader of Islam, fighting each other. It just sounds like something
out of... the infiltration you said was done by who?
By Jews.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about that for a bit. You mentioned that there was 4 tribes that were expelled from Medina.
3.
Yes. Do you know the stories behind these?
Sure, we can get into that.
I'm curious because
so when Hazur Sallallahu comes to Medina, there were 3 Jewish tribes and 2 Arab tribes. the Jewish tribes, they're called the Banu Kanika, the Banu Nadir, and the Banu Qurayza. And the Muslim tribe, where they became Muslim, the Arab tribes, they are the Aus and the Khazraj tribes. Okay? Now, those are the ones that accepted Islam. Those are the who we call the
because the Arabs had
Ansar.
no religion.
No, they were mushrikeen, right? They were idol worshippers. Okay, that was their religion.
Okay, so they had no monotheistic belief, right?
They accept Islam, and Hazur Sallallahu comes there, and at that time, the Jewish tribes and the Arab tribes, they had already been in disputes with each other, and they were already looking for a leader amongst them that can kind of take charge so that these disputes would finish. Okay, and there was a person that had already was in the forefront to become that leader. His name was, he becomes the leader of the hypocrites. His name was Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul. Okay. Right, so he's a Muslim now.
Jewish or?
No, he was an Arab, but he becomes a Muslim. Yeah. But he actually just wanted to be in charge. And now Hazur Sallallahu comes, an outsider, and they choose him to be in charge. This is the Charter of Medina, where they all agree to these terms. Amongst those terms are, for example, that if we are attacked in Medina,
anyone in Medina,
if we're attacked, then we are a consortium. We're like together. We're together in this. So that's an attack on all of us. So this is our
regardless of whoever you are. Jew,
So if you're attacking if you're attacking us, the Medinites, if you're attacking us here, then like if the attack is in Medina, that's the other thing. It's not like if the Jews being attacked or the Muslims are being attacked somewhere else. If it's in Medina, then we are together.
Yeah,
right.
Which is reasonable.
Very reasonable. Reasonable. These kinds of things, and then your property, your life, your rights. You have all of those. Yeah. Okay. You don't have to. And there's no conversion here. He's not telling them you have to force convert or do anything. And in regards to legal matters, they will be governed according to their own, Bible or their own scripture. Yeah. Right. All of these things are the rights that are granted, and all of and they accept that you are our person. We accept you as the one in charge. Right. This is the agreement. So now there's a lot of treachery that's going to start happening. Okay, so we start with the Banu Kanika, right? They do treason, and they make a plan to attack the life of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They wanted to invite him somewhere and throw a rock on him. Like it was like inviting him to his castle, but it was to assassinate him. Yeah. Right. He finds out about this through revelation, and he doesn't go. And the Banu Kanika come out and admit to this, right? When this happens, they are allowed to leave. So they've committed treachery, right? They've committed treason, but they're not bothered. They're not killed. Their possessions are not taken. They're allowed to leave with all their possessions. So they leave. Right, they're banished from Medina because you can't be trusted. Yeah. A few years go down the road, now the Bani Nadir do the same. They also, now there was a dispute between them. There was like a Muslim lady in the marketplace, and she's harassed by some Jews, and then a Muslim comes to defend, and then the Muslim is killed, and in retaliation, I think one of the Jews is then killed. So this is like kind of the scuffle that kind of starts that scenario with the Banu. I'm hoping I'm getting them right. Maybe I'm have the one of them or the other backwards. But this is kind of the scenario what happens with the Banu Nadir. Now, their treachery is a little bit more, right? So they are banished and their possessions are taken. Okay? But their lives are spared.
Because murder is involved.
Because murder is involved, yes. Yeah. Now, the Banu Qurayza, they are banished when the Battle of the Ditch happens. Because during the Battle of the Ditch, just imagine that you are surrounded by the enemy and you have the Arab tribes that are there in Medina, and this one Jewish tribe that's also living here in the outskirts of Medina. And instead of defending, they are helping the enemy.
Yeah, instead of defending your home.
And remember, that was one of the things in the charter that everyone has agreed to, that if they're attacked, then everybody's attacked. So everyone has to defend, but they don't defend. They stay in their castle, they don't come. And then they send even a camel loads of food stuff to the armies outside Medina. And then they do different things. They've already made their decision that they are going to attack from the inside, while the disbelievers that are on the outside of the ditch are going to attack from the outside, and we're going to finish off the Muslims like this once and for all. Right? That's not how things pan out. And the ones who are there was a person, I forgot his name. It was recently Hazur mentioned it, but a person who came from the side of the disbelievers, and he came, but in his heart he had converted. So he goes and talks with the Banu Qurayza tribe, and he tells them and their leaders that the decision that you've made to go against the Muslims was a preposterous one, because when these tribes are gone, when these army is gone, the Muslims are still going to be here, and then you're going to have to deal with them, right? So why don't you ask for an assurity? Why don't you get some men, some people as a collateral from the tribes outside, from the Quraysh, keep them here as a surety that they're not going to just leave us. So he says this to the Banu Qurayza, and then goes out to the disbelievers, to the Quraysh, and to Abu Sufyan, who is the leader of the Quraysh there in the army, and tells him that this is what they're going to do. They can't be trusted, and they're going to ask for collateral. Don't give them anybody. So he sowed the seeds in both the armies, and that's exactly what happens. They asked for collateral. They said, no way. They said, see, I told you so. I told you so. And the armies outside, they think that our guy on the inside isn't actually with us. So Allah has made this plan now that they have to leave. And then they're very superstitious people. There's other stories that you find in the narrations as well, that like the wind, there was a strong wind that night, and the fire were blown out, seen as a very bad omen on their part. So one tribe just like abandons the field and leaves. They think that the Muslims have attacked at night. The other tribe sees them running. They start running. Everybody running. By the morning, all of them are gone.
So just chaos and confusion. Scattered.
But now the battle of the ditch is won by the Muslims. Okay? And this is going to have like this, the fact that they won against such a large army is going to reverberate throughout like the Arab society. Like this, they've done something out of the ordinary now. Like very extraordinary. It was already extraordinary. Now it's just something like the angels are definitely there helping these people, kind of thing, right? Hazur Sallallahu goes home, and Allah reveals to him to put back on your armor and to go to the Banu Qurayza and to read Asr there. And that's what he does, and the Muslim army comes.
He's reading Asr Namaz.
Remember, and the Battle of the Ditch was a very hard fought battle. Like each person, each man, woman, and child needed to be on the ground and working and making sure the ditch is not crossed in any way. Because remember, this is a huge army they're fighting. At the same time, inside, now they find out, because one of the aunts, I think it was an aunt, I can't remember correctly her name, a Sahabiyat, a female companion of the Prophet ﷺ, finds when the Jews are lurking around, finding where the women and children are, and sees that they're spying and sees what their intentions are, and attacks them. And she cuts off the head of one of them and throws it to the other, and they scatter. So these information is like, is going around that the Banu Qurayza have done treachery. They've done all this. This has happened. They've attacked us point blank from the back while we were engaged in a fight outside, right? So he goes to them, and they lock themselves up in their castle, and the castle is besieged by the Muslims. Now the agreement that they wanted was the same as Banu Nazir. They said, okay, we got caught the third time, like red-handed type of thing. Give us the same punishment. We want the same punishment as the previous tribe. Hazur Sallallahu said, no, you'll get whatever punishment you deserve. Right? Talks are happening. and they are fearful that they're going to be they're fearful that Hazur Sallallahu is going to kill them, so they refuse to accept the Prophet Sallallahu verdict on their matter, and they said that we want the verdict of another person. It was one of the leaders of the other two Arab tribes. His name was Hazrat Saad. They said we want Saad's verdict because they had good relations with him. So they said, we will not accept anything from you, Muhammad. We want his verdict. And they accept the verdict of Saad, and Saad says that according to your book, according to your law, because of what you have done, your treachery, your punishment is death. So the fighters, the ones who were able-bodied fighters of that tribe, they were killed. This is the story of the Banu Qurayza, Banu Kanaka, Banu Nazir. And the ones that were banished, they later on went to an area called Khabar. This was a stronghold of the Jews, and they allied with themselves there. And there's another whole history of the Battle of Khabar, which we don't probably want to get into right now.
Who did that take
place?
That
takes place between Hazur Sallallahu and the Jews of Khabar.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It didn't end just in Medina with the Jews, no.
Yeah.
It still hasn't ended, by the way.
Yeah. Sure.
So, this was useful, you think?
This is very useful for me.
Yeah.
For me. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. And then we'll see.
And then I don't want to say like everything I said is like accurate to the degree, but to the best that I could remember from my memory, I tried my best. So take it for what it is with a grain of salt.
Yeah, of course, everyone should do their own research.
Yes.
And, verify things.
Thanks, man.
Sure.
Appreciate it. All right. Take care.
Okay.